So things are getting interesting. I think the pace of the talks have really picked up in the last couple of days.
Yeah, things are just getting in general. Like a lot is happening. The pace is picking up.
It appears that things are getting done,
which we kind of expected. Like with a date floating around, like these were going to be the days that things happened. But I keep thinking back to something Adam Silver said. It was NBA All-Star Weekend when he was asked about this, and he was like, this stuff gets done at the 11th hour. And so you knew, like, okay, when the clock strikes 11, like, that's sort of when we're going to kind of feel like we're on the roller coaster. And I certainly
absolutely do. The Players Association and the league have been meeting today. They're meeting as we speak. The meeting has been going on for over 6 hours at this point. They also met yesterday for 12 hours. The last of, league staff that walked out, I think Kathy Engelbert walked out at 5 a.m. And spoke to reporters. Terry Jackson spoke to reporters just a half an hour before that. So everything is really starting to pick up. And I'm glad that you brought up Adam Silver here, because I think that he's an interesting character in all of this. I think in general, I think the reason things are picking up is obviously there's the arbitrary deadline that all of a sudden, as it's gotten closer, everybody's talking about how, it was always just a soft deadline. And I think that there's probably another week of push and pull before we have to delay the season. It's almost like that was just always a strategy by the WNBA to get the WNBA PA to cave, which is to say that I think that the WNBA started to exhaust some of its arsenal, right? Like, I think we can take it back to housing. I think taking housing off the table was an attempt to kind of dismantle the middle class unity as well, because that is important to probably 75% of the league, but not necessarily important to the percentage of the league that makes enough money to not necessarily. I mean, like it's an interesting thing with housing, right? Like some of these houses are like empty, like if you're like, right. if you were like earning like high level salaries, you're not staying in like the team provided housing. And some of that for some players, it's very, very important. The PA made sure that they, stayed on the side of the middle class for that. They've pushed very hard for housing. We'll see what it looks like in the final proposal. Multiple proposals, according to Annie Costabile, have been, passed back and forth from both parties through the course of the day. So who knows exactly where the progress is. I think after the housing thing didn't work, we had a very interesting set of circumstances come up last week that I have just been the Brian Windhorst, like, why would Utah do that about this for essentially the last week? Like, where have you, and I'm talking about the letter, where do you fall?
So I think my thing to remember, like in general with negotiations like these, and the thing I had to keep reminding myself is like, I don't know. And the things I do know are things that people want me to know. And you have to like always keep that in the back of your head. Like stuff gets leaked, and it gets leaked for certain reasons because someone wants it to be out there. And so when there's this letter that Kelsey Plum and Brianna Stewart sent to Terry Jackson, basically with some complaints or concerns about it said concerns about how the union is like conducting these negotiations, and then I think there were some specific asks about like communication, information that they're both on that executive committee, and so information that they said they didn't have, that they had maybe felt like they were getting proposals sort of late and had seen them like really late in the process. So those were the specifics. And I mean, I saw a lot of people like pretty upset with the two of them for like, sort of throwing this wrench into the negotiations and making the union look disorganized and divided. But I mean, I don't know. I think Howard Megdal reported that neither of them were the ones who leaked it, or, they're camps are saying that they did
Uh-huh.
not leak it, at least. And so I don't
Yeah.
really know who that leak was supposed to serve.
Well,
And so, yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they leaked it either. And this is like I just want to be clear with everything I'm saying. I don't think. Like let's just be clear. I'm just speaking for myself, my own opinion here. Um I don't think that they leaked it. I do not think that they were purposefully trying to sabotage the players union or make it seem like they weren't unified because I don't think that serves their interests. I also don't
No. And
go ahead.
I also think it's totally fine to have concerns about how this organization that is supposed to be serving your interests is conducting itself. And if you are worried about something or have
Yeah.
questions about something, I think it's
Mhm.
only fair to ask about those. Um,
Mhm.
I know, like, when I was writing about this, I had some readers just asking, like, did they have to put it in writing? If, that's like, it's obviously going to
Yeah.
get leaked, but I don't know. People who do business like to have things in
I
writing
thought it was
sometimes,
very
and so
strange and very interesting that it was put in writing,
yeah,
honestly. I would love to know more about why that was the chosen form of communication and whose idea it was. And if I'm Stewie or Kelsey, I'm also very much looking back at whoever it was that encouraged me to put it in writing or advised me to put it in writing, and I'm wondering what their motivations are. And I'm not saying it's an age. I have no idea who it was. I'm just saying if I was them, I would definitely be doing that because of course something that's in writing is going to get leaked. And in hindsight, I kind of feel like they got played. And I feel like it was a bit of a power play from maybe the top. Like that's
I mean, they did come out of it looking
it looks
sure. I
funny in
mean,
the
it
light.
was strange because they, their names are on this letter, and then whatever, not 24 hours later, their names are on the statement that's like that comes out from the executive committee, basically saying, despite the league's attempts to divide us, we're going to stay unified. And so I was thinking of the like Tim
We'll
Robinson,
find
we're
the
all
guy
trying
who
to
did
find the guy
this.
who did this
Yeah.
meme. Because this second thing is like signed Brianna Stewart
Yeah.
and Kelsey Plum and all the other
Well,
members
I
of
feel like they were
the
trying to do
executive committee.
damage
So
control. I
it
also feel like when like there were multiple attempts at damage control. Like I think immediately you had multiple players come out in favor of Terry Jackson and say that they've never had communication issues. It's also what I've heard off the record. I haven't really been able to, get from anybody that there's been like genuine communication issues. The worst thing I've heard is that like maybe you have to ask them for something, but they give it to you if you ask, right? Um, so I think that play didn't necessarily work. Then the players union comes out with a poll that says 84% of players do not want to take the deal that's on the table right now, which is to say that, the position that, you should just take that deal and move forward was a minority position. I think whoever did the leak wanted to make it seem like it was a majority position. Now, maybe on some level, Stewie and KP wanted to jostle for a little bit more influence. That could definitely be the case, but I don't think that that's the way that they would have gone about it independently. Um, I think that when you get to this level of negotiation, when you get to where the players union has been, where they have not capitulated to what the WNBA wants, despite the fact that the WNBA has used the technique of delay, the fact and the technique of trying to create disharmony amongst the players union. I think this is when you start to see the gears of power work together to try to remind you of where you stand. And, they will use people who are well-meaning to do that. And that's kind of what I think happened here. And I'm gonna, maybe and I'll let people kind of like connect the dots themselves here on some level. But I think that, if you take it back like kind of like the last 10 days or so, the players union announces that they made money from revenue sharing for the first time. That money will be dispersed, and they're also giving out $9 million in group licensing. That's we get the first Howard Megdal report that, oh, like agents Seems like agents were confused by this. I don't understand why an agent would be confused by that. There's reporting on the existence of this 50-50 partnership going far as back as 2020. Somebody like me knows about it, or 2022 rather. Somebody like me knows about it. So why would agents not know about it? I have a hard time kind of like buying that in the first place. But basically, as soon as this report came out, this report that essentially, like, once you see that report, you're like, holy shit, this is a huge win for the players union. It's wind in their sails. They should have kind of won the week after that, and they didn't because of the reporting that came out afterwards about potential disharmony. And in the aftermath of all of that, it turns out that things weren't really ever that bad, right? So then you start to see reports that, oh, like maybe there's like the 84% of players, like maybe that was a push pull. I think that was a very normal pull. I didn't see that question and think, oh, like they're really trying to influence an answer one way or the other. And Sophie Cunningham said as much too. She said she thought that the poll was fine. So there was sort of like this jostling going on over like just how much unity does a players union have. And I think I think the whole strategy left a a bit of a glancing blow. And I don't think that it came from, like in like Stewie or KP, but I think that when you think about like the agencies, not the agents, but the agencies that they are represented by, and just the general powers that be in the basketball universe, and Adam Silver, and the fact that Don Van Natta, who has never been around a WNBA scoop before, was part of this leak. I think you start to sort of like be able to get a picture of what might actually be happening here. All of which is to say that didn't really work out. And the March deadline passed. And now I think everybody is in the room.
And we're still here.
We're still here. And
the
I
universe
think
did not blow up.
hopefully we are now at the place where the league has been like, okay, everything we tried hasn't really worked. We might actually have to play ball and listen to the one thing that the players have been saying from the entire start of negotiations, which is that we are not backing down on revenue sharing.
Yeah, and if we're having 10-hour meetings, marathon meetings, like we're going somewhere now. That they've kind of they're not playing hardball like before.
There must be something, and I don't know what's going on. Like everybody's been very, very tight about what is actually going on in these meetings, and hopefully we'll find out a little bit more tonight. But as of right now, we don't know. I will say the one thing that I found very interesting is Clara Wu Tsai was the only owner at yesterday's meeting. I'm not sure if she's the only owner at today's meeting. I think Jen Rosati, who is actually a team president for the Connecticut Sun, is the only only owners at this meeting. All of which is to say, Ginny Gilder, who was at the last meeting, is not at this meeting. And it makes me wonder if now the WNBA is pivoting to its plan B, which is we were going to try to come up with a revenue sharing agreement that didn't necessarily price out the ownership groups that aren't going to be able to afford to pay players in this new era. I wonder if now they're actually saying, okay, you know what, like the lowest common denominator teams, and I have a lot more sympathy for Seattle in this situation, who Ginny Gilder is a co-owner in Seattle, than I do for, say, Chicago, right? Like I think Seattle has been a team that invested before it was cool, and they have an incredible legacy. So you understand why, if they're saying, and Natasha Cloud has said, hey, the Seattle owners in these meetings saying that we're losing money. You understand why, there's a level of like, you want to hold on to this asset, especially as it's growing. And I can definitely sympathize with the idea that like you might not be able to. The Sun, the Sky, the Wings, I don't care so much about those franchises like having to sell. Like I think that's fine. I think that's in the best interest of fans, of players, of like the league at large. But at the same time, like as much as the union needs everybody to ratify a deal, they need a simple majority. So do owners. So I am very curious, because I don't think the owners are as aligned as like the owners just can't talk. They don't talk to the media, whereas the players, WNBA players are always talking to the media, right? It's like a very different dynamic. So I am very curious to see when this is all settled, how much the sort of like the ownership dynamics will have impacted what is going on in the room in the last 48 hours.